Assalam wa rahmatullah. This mic better right here? This one? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wa mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una. Allahumma zidna 'ilman innaka anta 'alimul hakim. Allahumma ij'al hadhihi muhadara hujjatan lana la hujjatan 'alayna ya rabbil alameen. Amma ba'd. Before we get into the class, inshallah ta'ala, just want to quickly review some of the things that we covered last week, inshallah. Last week we spoke about al-tahara. Sah? What is tahara?
Purification.
Purification, ahsant. What else did we cover? Al-hadith wa al-khabath. Al-hadith and al-khabath. What's the difference and what do they mean in English? What's al-hadith? Hadith, rafi'. Rafi', what does that mean?
Ritual.
He doesn't understand. You got to explain. What does that mean?
The rafi' was the lifting.
Lifting what? What are we lifting?
Ritual impurity.
Ritual impurities. What is a ritual impurity? What does that mean?
Anything that comes from the body parts.
Ahsant. Anything that comes from the body parts, from the two private parts of the body, these are called ritual impurities. Okay? Ritual impurities. Tayyib. So we had two types of ritual impurities we spoke about, right? Don't worry about this right yet. We'll get to this later. We had two types of ritual impurities, right? What are they? The actual ritual impurities itself, we gave examples, right? So what are some examples? Wudu and a ghusl. Ahsant. Wudu and a ghusl. Wudu is an example of a way to purify yourself ritually before you pray, and ghusl is the same way, right? The other part, we called it the meaning of ritual impurity, right? Like, what's the meaning of ritual impurity and why?
You said lift.
Lift. The meaning of lifting up or removing a ritual or not. No, the reason for lifting a ritual impurity. Huh?
So we're looking for the mind right now.
The meaning, yes. What is the meaning of removing a ritual impurity? What does that mean?
It means that wait a minute. The meaning was it takes the it's gonna sound like I'm saying the same thing.
No, it's okay. That's all right. It's all right. It's okay.
But it takes the meaning as it takes the.
So give me the example that we used.
Okay, so one of the examples we used was like the person who let's say he makes wudu in the morning time,
right?
And then he doesn't break his wudu, but
right?
He wants to make another wudu.
Like at dhuhr.
Yeah, like at dhuhr time. He just wants a fresh wudu.
Okay.
So even though he's not lifting anything. He's not lifting anything. He made another wudu, so it's like a recommended wudu. So it falls in the same meaning.
But it's not actually lifting up.
Right.
All right, is that concept clear?
No.
If it's not clear, we're going to stop right here. Is that concept clear? Yes or no? If I don't see, listen, when we was, one of the mashayikh used to tell us, they said that if you ask somebody if something clear, he said, don't ask those questions because you give people the opportunity to lie. Because most people want to say, yes, it's clear, and they really don't understand, but they don't want to be the only one raising their hand, right? Right? So we're here to learn. So it's okay. Some things we just don't get right away. It's all right. So I'll be asked questions, all right? So my man over there, explain, is that clear? Right. So if we say ritual impurities, two types, the actual ritual impurity itself and the meaning of it. The meaning of it was making a wudu again after you already had wudu initially, right? So that initial wudu that you made, it lifted the ritual impurity. So at the time of dhuhr, when you wanted to make wudu again, you just made wudu again, but it didn't lift any ritual impurity because you were already ritually pure, if you will. If that makes sense.
Now you just see the purity.
Okay? Is that clear? Right. The next thing we spoke about was al-khabath. What is khabath? Filth, najasa. Right? Right. We broke that down into two types as well. Ritually and what? I'm sorry, not ritually. Actual. We call it actual impurities. Right? So actual impurities, we have two types. The actual impurity itself and the meaning of the actual impurity. But the meaning part, we're going to put that to the side and just focus on the actual impurity itself. What is it? What is an example of an impurity? Like what? Like what on their clothes? Like urine. I sent. Like urine on their clothes. So in order to remove this, how do we remove it? That's what we're going to talk about today. All right? So right now, we clear about what we covered last week, inshallah. This is just, a lot of stuff is on it. You can get this on the internet too. The previous class if you missed it. Today, inshallah, we're going to cover a lot of information. A lot of information. So if you don't have your pen and your pad and you're not prepared, Allah yainik. Allah aid you. We're going to talk about water. All right? But so we're going to make it so that it's relevant to, our situation. Right now we have electricity and we have running water, right? How many people here lived in an environment where you didn't have running water? That's the minority of the class. Right. How many people actually went camping? You went camping. Okay, that's a little more. All right, so to make it more relevant, we're talking about purifying water. But this purifying water, it has certain elements to it. There's certain elements so that you can identify it. Perhaps something may happen, we don't have running water anymore. What do? Or you might be out camping and so on and so forth, and there's water. Can you use it? Yes or no? So when you think about this, this was written in the 900th century, or in 986, I think, by Imam al-Hajjawi. His book is called Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni. Okay? However, the fuqaha, many of the ulama, when we talk about issues like this, we have to make it relevant so that people can understand. So, the first type of water, and basically our whole class, inshallah, is going to be written on the board here. Before we get started, the first thing we're going to talk about here, I'm going to use this pointer. Here we have al-ma. You see that here, guys? Let me slide this back. But, so we're going to use this pointer here. Al-ma, water, right? So water is broken down into how many categories? Three categories. We have ma'un tahur, which is purifying water. We have water that's just pure, but it's not purifying. And we have filthy water. Okay? 3 categories. Some of you may be familiar with some of the scholars of Al-Islam saying, no, it's only 2. Right? No, it's only 2 categories. But we're going to talk about 3 categories. If you look through the books of many of the scholars of the past, the earlier scholars, they mentioned 3 categories. The same thing that we're going to talk about here. The category that we're going to discuss today is called tahur. Tahur, which means that it purifies. So, for every category that we discuss, the first thing we have to do is understand what's the name of it, the definition of it, and the ruling of it. Is that clear? So for everything we discuss, the first thing we're going to talk about the name, the definition, and the ruling of that particular water. Are we good so far? Any questions? Huh? By Mumtaz. We good so far? All right. So the first thing, the name of it is purifying. The water is purifying. No question about that. The name of the water, the type of water is purifying water. Okay? What is the definition of purifying water? What does that mean? If someone were to ask you, what type of water can we use to make wudu or purify ourselves with? Clean water. Okay, so purifying water is water remaining in the original state. Water remaining in the original state. What is the original state? In Arabic, it will say, Al-Baqi ala khilqatihi. Al-Baqi ala khilqatihi. khilqatihi, it means the way it was created. The way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it. Okay? We okay so far? Right. When we say baqi ala khilqatihi, or in its original state, now from the original state, it breaks down into two categories. From the original state of the water, it breaks down into how many categories? Two categories. Everyone understand so far? Right. From these two categories, the first category is called haqiqatan. It's called what? Haqiqatan. This is in Arabic. In other words, it means the reality. The reality of the water is in its natural state. So some examples of that would be what? Water in the sea, water in a well, for example, drinking water, like this. Okay? This is called what? Haqiqatan. That means it remained in its natural state and there's no change to it. There's no what? There's no change. You got a question, Sheikh?
The rainwater.
Like rainwater. Same thing. It's called al-baqi ala khilqatihi. Yani, this means that it remains in its original state. It doesn't change. Are we clear so far? So then, our class, or what we're trying to understand here, is not this side. This here, this is clear. This is clear. So this is not our issue of concern here. Our issue of concern is the one that says hukman. Hukman. So we have something that is in the reality, like water in its natural state. And then we have another type of water that's purifying, but it's called hukman. What does that mean, hukman? It means water that has changed but remains a purifier. Water that has changed but it still remains a purifier. Okay? Changed here, water changes one of three ways. Either by smell, taste, or what? Or color. Smell, taste, or color. So anytime as we go on in this particular class and we speak about water that has changed, that means one of those three categories: taste, smell, or color. Are we clear so far? Hukman. Yes, hukman. You can just say water that's changed. I just put it in Arabic here for those that read Arabic so you can familiarize yourself with the terms, but otherwise this is what it means.
Water that's changed,
But it's still a purifier. As we go on, we're going to find water that's changed, but it's not a purifier. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We just want to focus on this. Is this clear so far? Right. So, the definition is water remaining in its original state. It has two names. Either it's haqiqatan, in other words, the water in its natural state as when it rains, or it's hukman. It takes the ruling of water that is in its natural state. Is that clear so far? Right. The next issue here, what is the ruling on this type of water? On this type of water that we just discussed, hukman, what is the ruling on it? What is the ruling on purifying water? What is the ruling on purifying water? So, Sheikh Abu Musa Hajjawi and Imam Ahmed and other than them, the definition is here, or the ruling of it is here. Nothing lifts ritual impurities or remove actual foreign impurities except for this purifying water. Is that clear? All right, so just to expound on this a bit, when we say this word foreign, what does that mean? Foreign. What does that mean? Foreign. Here. So it's not the norm. So when the ulama explain this, when the scholars of Islam, when they explain this part here about foreign, in Arabic it's called najisun tari'un. Najisun tari'un. If we say tari'un, which is foreign, what does that mean? So an example would be, if you have a thobe, we have a garment. And on our garment, some urine got on the garment. Some urine or some feces or anything that's impure, filthy, got on your garment. This is foreign. This is a foreign substance on a place that is originally pure. When a foreign substance comes to something that is originally pure, And this is called actual foreign impurity. Are we clear so far? I know you're not going to be able to memorize all this, so I hope you guys have writing this stuff down. Huh? We're going to have some tests on this too. Like, so then, any questions about this right here, what we covered so far? Any questions?
You said it was things that change water, color, smell, what was the third one?
Taste. Color, smell, and taste. Go ahead.
So the definition, you said we're going to be speaking about three things: meaning,
The definition and the ruling.
right, the definition, the meaning, and the rule.
Mm-hmm. That's for all three types of water. Tahurun, Tahirun, and Najis. Right now, we're only talking about Tahur. Water that is a purifier.
So the definition of purifying water is
Water that remains in its original state. Once the water that remains in its original state, it breaks down into two parts. It's water in its natural state, which is hakikatan, like water from the sky, rain, drinking water, so on and so forth. And then we have water that is considered hukman. It takes the ruling of the water that's in its natural state, but it's not. Why? Because it was changed by one of those three characteristics. Either the smell, the taste, or the what? Or the color. Ahsant. Are we clear on this? No questions? Because we're going to move on. Ready? Bismillah. Right. You sure, Sheikh? I'm looking at your face, man. Look like you have a question.
Yeah, I'm still trying to catch up with
Well, we're about to switch this into another chart, so that's why I need you to stick with me. Huh?
All right.
You ready?
Ready.
All right. No questions. This is clear so far. All right. So we're going to change it. Huh? Don't. Don't. All right. All right. So, if you remember before, we mentioned that water in its natural state, right? All right. So that water, we're going back to the thing we mentioned before. Water in its natural state, right? The way that it was created, it has two parts, right? Hakikatan and hukman. Right or wrong?
Right.
All right. So now, I mentioned before, this hakikatan side here, we already know this. So we don't have to worry about this. This is clear. No one's going to ask questions about that. That's, turn on the spigot and there you go. But this is for the people, maybe you're a camper. Maybe you don't have access to water like you did before. Maybe to the end of it. Okay? There are different scenarios where, when we were living in Mecca, sometimes we didn't have running water. The water, they would have it on top of the building, and once it ran out, you had to wait for it's called the Wyatt. They would call it a Wyatt. A big water truck would come and fill up your building. But if not, you would have to go carry jugs. You had to use it for wudu, ghusl, whatever, So here, in this sense right here, we have to look at this, hukman. So here, I mentioned 5 scenarios here. 5 scenarios of examples, or 5 examples of hukman. Yani changed but remains a purifier. So this is water here that is changed, but it still remains a purifier. Are we clear? So now we're going to mention 5 examples of this type of water. This type of water that has changed, but it still remains a what? A purifier. Right. So right now, number 1. Milhu ma'i. Milhu ma'i. Salt water. What does that mean, salt water? How is that, changed? Not seawater, salt water. There's a difference between the two, and we'll talk about that when we get over here on the 3rd chart. Right now we're talking about salt in your water. What does that look like? For example, you have salt in your cup of water, all right? You got a cup of water, and you put some salt in it. Iodine or whatever. What is it going to change? It's going to change the taste. But once the taste is changed, it's still going to remain a purifier. The question that you just asked me, remind me when we get on the 3rd chart. The same exact question, because we're going to visit it again. Are we clear so far? Right. The next one is old water sitting for a year that has changed somewhat. color, smell, or taste. It's still a purifier, right? If water was sitting, it's called Tul al-Mukth. Tul al-Mukth. It means that the water has been sitting for a very long time, but it still remains a purifier. So the questioner might ask, why? And I'm going to use this one as an example. Why does this remain a purifier if it changed? Because generally, if something changes from its original state, when we get into Najis and Tahir, we're going to learn that if a water changes outside of its natural state, then it loses the ability to purify something else. But why here is this water here that's old, that's been sitting? I'll give you an example. If we had a gallon of water, or bigger, maybe 2-3 gallons in a bucket, and we sat it there under a tree for 6 months, and we come back later and it changed. It's going to change a little bit, right? It's going to be natural changes, but it's still going to change. Maybe things might fall in it, right? It's going to change. Maybe some algae or something will get inside, or something. We'll get to that later, but it's going to change somewhat, right? Why is it tahur? Why does it remain a purifier, even though it changed? They say, the ulama al-Islam, they say that لِأَنَّ التَّغَيُّرَ لَيْسَ مِنْ فِعْلِ الْفَاعِلِ. This is because it changed, but it wasn't due to a person actually changing it. It changed over time by itself, naturally. Is that clear? Fine. So what's the ruling on using that water? كَذَلِكَ هُوَ الْإِجْمَاعُ الْعُلَمَاء عَلَى طُهُورِيَّتِهِ. The scholars of Islam from the Sahaba on up, many of the ulama, well, حَكَى بِهِ إِجْمَاعِ Ibn Mundhir. Ibn Mundhir is from the scholars of the earlier centuries. He said that this is an ijma'. Yani, in other words, this is a scholarly consensus that this water is a purifier. So think about it. Right now you're camping. You come across some water, it looks stagnant. It looks stagnant. It's still a purifier. You can still make wudu with it. You can still make ghusl with it if the water has been sitting for a very long time. Long as it's not changed by anything that's impure. Long as it's not changed by anything that's impure. Like, we're going to talk about that too. This water here changed by something that is pure, not necessarily a purifier. Like what? For example, leaves, for example, anything like that. Cause it out, anything that caused it to change somewhat, just from it was sitting for a very long time. So some of its characteristics changed a little. Is that clear? And remember, we're going to go back to this. This is why I circled it. I circled these two things here because they're going to come back up later. Scholarly consensus, even though I wrote it in Arabic, I'm telling you what this says here. Al-ijma', it means a scholarly consensus. Here, this means that it was not changed by a person. It was changed naturally over time. Is that clear? Fadli, Sheikh. Go ahead.
You say that this hukman is water it's been sitting.
It's been sitting. Listen, so hukman, pay attention, Sheikh. Hukman here, it means that water that has been changed, but it still remains a purifier. And when we say change, we mention 3 things: taste, smell, or color. Okay, so one of those attributes changed about that water, but it still remains a purifier. Now, I mean, if it's purifying, I mean, you could drink it. I don't know of any prohibition to drinking it. Right now, we're talking about making wudu, right? Oh, go ahead, Sheikh. I'm sorry.
The thing that's confusing to me is that, let's say we come across some water that's in the ground.
We didn't get to that yet. Right now, listen, don't look. Right now, listen, Sheikh. Right now, I want to stick to where we're at. Go ahead. Right now, like based on what we covered right now, is this clear? Okay. If this is clear thus far, then we're going to touch what you're saying later. I don't want to. Okay. So right now, up until this point, is this clear? Up until here, number 2.
No.
All right. What's not clear?
My thing is, what I'm trying to say is, this water that's been sitting,
Mm-hmm.
does it come out of the vessel? Has it been placed by someone in a vessel?
Okay, so let's say it was placed in a vessel. Let's say it was a puddle on the ground, but it's over a gallon's worth of water. Let's say that the water is like a lake or a pond, but that's considered a lot of water. We're not talking about a lake or a pond. Let's use a vessel, like you said, like a vessel, a bowl. Okay, let's say a bucket. There's been a bucket of water sitting there for 6 months. Okay. All right. So let's use that. Okay.
I'm good with that.
So where aren't you good at?
I'm thinking, is it just contained to the vessel?
So when you say, is it just contained to the vessel?
Is it in the tree trunks? And, I've been in the woods.
So let's say it's in the tree trunks. What I'm saying, I'm not giving it any limits. In any case, if you find water anywhere, whether it's in a vessel, whether it's in a tree trunk, wherever it may be, if the characteristics of it are changed over a length of time, and naturally over a length of time, there's no impurities in it, but it may have changed, over time. The color may change because it's been sitting for 6 months. This water is still a purifier. That's the point. And the dalil, so what's the dalil, brother? The dalil is ijma', scholarly consensus. Consensus of the earlier scholars of Al-Islam. There's even a hadith that talks about it, but many of the ulama said that and here's another benefit, is that sometimes there may be a hadith, part of the hadith is sahih, and the other part of the hadith is da'if. The part of this particular hadith that's da'if, they say if it changes, the taste, the smell, and the color changes, then it becomes impermissible to use. That part of the hadith is da'if. However, the ulama, the scholars of Al-Islam, they all agree that the meaning of it is correct. Does that make sense? This is a whole nother subject. I just wanted to slide that in there. All right, I don't want to lose. Let me just back up. Erase that. Just scratch that last part. Scratch it. I don't want to throw any curveballs. Just scratch that. We're going to get back here. All right, I don't want to open up nothing. Let's just scratch that last part and back up. Is this clear? Are we moving? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Number 3. If it changed with something that is different to prevent, like what? Oh, sorry. If it changes with something, I can't even read my handwriting. If it changes with something that is difficult to prevent, say for example, before we said if the water just sat for a long time. Here, if the water changed, for example, some algae got into it, some moss grew into the water. Have you guys seen water like that? Right. This water here still remains a purifier. It still remains a purifier.
What about
if any leaves fall?
like we live in urban areas and stuff. Sometimes the water gets like trash and all kinds.
That's something different. We didn't get that. If it's trash in it, then that's maybe something that's impure.
Okay.
Right? Here, I don't think anyone's going to say trash has some pure qualities to it. Right? All right? Say again? They eat trash. Well, we just listen. Al-hukm al-ghalib. Most people don't eat trash.
I'm just saying from just a pure legal standpoint.
All right. So that's we got to stay the course. We got a lot to cover. All right, inshallah. So then, number 4. The 4th type is water. First of all, are we clear up on number 3?
If it changes with something you can't prevent.
Yes. Like what? Can you prevent algae from growing in water? No. Moss? No. Maybe if it's sitting outside and some leaves from a tree fall into the water? No. You can't prevent any of that. Right? So in this case, that particular water, even though it has changed somewhat, it still is a purifier. It still is a what? Purifier. Are we good on this? On number 3?
Well, my question is, if the water's been just sitting there.
Uh-huh.
You said it's already make wudu. So you saying you can take that water and rinse your mouth out with that water?
If it's good to make wudu, you can rinse your mouth out with it. It's a purifier. I'm not saying it's something, listen, pay attention to me. I'm not saying, listen, let's make this clear. I'm not saying you leave the masjid, you want to go outside and look for puddles of water and want to test it out. No, but what I'm saying to you is right now, we got to understand that right now we have access to water. but there may be a time you don't have access to water. And now you have to try to figure out what to do.
I'm not trying to, but I grew up with, in them situations.
I'm sure you did.
Come on, you Murray.
We talked about it. But what were you saying?
Like, I go riding the four-wheelers in the trails over Jersey.
Okay.
Way miles away from any stores.
Where are you at?
Over in Jersey in the trails. Right?
Okay.
No water might be around.
Right.
Except for a lake.
Right. Well, a lake is something different. We're going to talk about that later. Yeah, a lake is a whole different category. Right now, the water that we're talking about, too, is considered a small amount.
Okay.
It's not a large amount of water. It's a small amount. All right? So, number 4, water next to a carcass, and it has an odor. So, say, for example, let's say that tree trunk, or you have that bucket of water. You left it there. You're out camping. You have that water on the side for wudu. You go away, you go out, you go hunt, whatever. You come back, you find a dead carcass next to your water. And the wind's blowing. So, that odor is going to travel. Right? So now that odor somewhat it affects the smell of your water. Right or wrong? So at this point, this water here still remains a purifier. Even though it affected the characteristics of the water. So I put here limada. Why? Because isn't that dead carcass considered najis?
Nah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So then why is that water still a purifier?
You said the carcass is next to the water?
The carcass is next to the water, and the smell. It altered your purifying water to some extent.
Yeah.
So why is that water still a purifier?
Physically impure.
It didn't mix.
Make the word impure. Like it didn't touch the water.
Okay, so look, what do some of the fuqaha? They say that لأنه لم يختلط به بل بالمجاورة. That dead carcass did not mix with the water. It was just merely next to it. It was just merely next to the water. However, it didn't mix with the water. فقط هو يشبه المكث بطول الزمن. And so the ulama al-Islam, they use something in Islam. I think we spoke about this in the first class. We called it al-qiyas. How many people remember what qiyas was? We spoke about it. Analogy, analytical deduction. What does that mean? Because it's very important to this hukm. See, one of the benefits of studying the Sharia is that we got to use things and make it applicable. So how does it apply here? We use the statement al-qiyas. We said al-qiyas before. What does qiyas mean? Analytical deduction. What does that mean? What example did we use 2 classes ago? Who remembers? You wasn't here? All right, who was here 2 classes ago? You were here.
Yes, now what was the question again?
What is qiyas? What are some examples? Because it's important to understand this right here. The 4th one, if you understood what we covered before, you're going to understand this. Everything that we cover is all connected. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we make comparison with liquor
No.
and
Ahsant. So what we did was, when we spoke about qiyas, we spoke about, first of all, we have to have a substance that we all know the ruling of that substance. Like what? We use alcohol, right? Alcohol is impermissible to drink. Bil ijma'. There's a scholarly consensus that alcohol is haram. Allah mentions it in the Quran, so on and so forth, right? So the ruling on drinking alcohol is impermissible. Is that clear?
Clear.
Fine. Can I get high?
No.
I'm asking. Can I?
Cannot.
Why not? Is there an ayah in the Quran that say I can't get high? Is there a hadith that say I can't get high? Specifically, the same way it specifically says you can't drink alcohol, there's something else that specifically says I can't get high.
But it's
No.
Because if you drink alcohol, you gotta get high. Anything get too high.
intoxicant.
It's an intoxicant. So then listen, pay attention. The reason why alcohol is impermissible is because it causes the intellect to fluctuate. It alters the intellect. So anything that alters the intellect is impermissible. And there's a principle in Al-Islam, it's called al-hukm yadurru ma'a illatihi wujudan wa adaman. And what this means is a ruling in Islam is contingent on the reason for its prohibition. If anything that, if for example, whatever is that whatever is present in that alcohol that causes it to be impermissible, if you find it in another substance, then it takes the same ruling. Is that clear? All right, so let's look at this example here. How does that relate? Contingent on whether that substance is found in another item or another thing. So let's look here. Here, the scholars of Al-Islam, they compared this dead carcass next to water. They compared this to what? Tul al-Mukth. They compared it to number 2. They said, hey, this water is similar to the water that's been sitting for a very long time, and it was affected. So based on that change from the water being affected from a long time that it was sitting, is similar to water that's changed by a carcass laying next to it. This is the, you might agree or disagree, but this is the example that they use based on qiyas. Is that clear? Or no? Qiyas is analytical deduction. So in order to have qiyas, you must have a basic thing. For example, we must have, let's say, alcohol. Then we have to have the ruling for it, and we have to know why it's made impermissible. Because we also covered something else from the first class. A ruling in Islam is broken down into 2 categories. Either is al-illa or ta'abbudi. Remember that? If something is ta'abbudi, this means that what? We hear and we obey and we don't ask questions. Like what? Praying Salatul Fajr is 2 raka'ats out loud. Why is that? And why do we pray 4 raka'at for Dhuhr and they're all silent? Why is that? We don't know. Why 3 raka'at for Maghrib and why 4 for Isha? Why 2 allowed for Maghrib and 1 silent for Maghrib? No one knows the reason for that. So the scholars of Al-Islam say, Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey and we don't ask questions. And the mere fact that we don't know the reason for it, we cannot make analytical deduction on that and compare it to something else. Is that clear? Like, so in order to make analytical deduction, you have to know the reason for its prohibition. Therefore, we can look at something else and apply the same ruling. Huh? Is that clear? Like, so that number 5. Something non-soluble falls into the water. Say, for example, we have water and a piece of wood fell into it. Or some grease fell into the water. Grease. Right? Grease is not going to mix. It's going to separate itself, right or wrong. So then it's not soluble. It doesn't dissolve inside of the water. A piece of wood fell from a tree into your bucket of water.
You said soluble?
It's soluble, meaning dissolve.
I thought you said valuable.
No.
Okay.
Okay? Are we clear on that one? So if something non-soluble, something that does not dissolve, falls into your water, it does not take it away from becoming a purifier. Is that clear? All right. And they say that this here, they also do another qiyas. They say this here is similar to the dead carcass next to the water. Which the dead carcass next to the water is what? Qiyas off of this part here. You see how they're all connected? Analytical deduction. The ulama, they use this a lot. All right? We clear on this so far? Can we move to the next one? Any questions about this? No. Fadl.
Aren't they, the 4th and 5th, aren't they a little bit different? The soluble is a solid thing that mixed with the water.
No, it's non-soluble.
Oh, no.
I said non-soluble. It doesn't dissolve in the water.
But the carcass, it didn't mix with the water.
It didn't mix with the water. It's separate. That's why I call it bil mujawara. Mujawara means next to, but not into.
Yeah, it didn't mix with the water, but it moved. It piece of wood, fell in the
But the wood did not dissolve in the water. Meaning you can take it out, and it's no remnants. Generally, it's not going to be any remnants. Plus, in and of itself, wood is tahor. It's tahir. It's pure. Right? Is that clear? Now listen, I'm not saying, we're not getting to the issue of what's strongest position, what's weakest position, because we can be on that all day. Only thing we're doing, we're explaining the book Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni. And when we studied this with the ulama, they said it's very important to understand how the ulama, they used to think. Not just what you believe is right and what you believe is wrong, Understand their sentences, understand what they meant, because it gives you a better appreciation in the religion. And that way, when you see things that are different than what you know it to be, you say, maybe they have a wajh, yani they have a position in the Sharia that may support that, based on adillah, based on evidence. Is that clear? Type. So, right now, are we clear on this right here? Any questions? No questions?
For number 4, the Arabic version.
The Arabic version here, I said, وَهُوَ يُشْبِهُ الْمُكْثُ بِطُولَ الزَّمَنِ. After the class, you just come take a picture of it too. Keep it. Where are we at? بِطُول الزَّمَن.
Okay,
Yeah, بِطُول. My handwriting is bad, I'm sorry. I wasn't the best handwriter. Yes, طول الزمن means over a long period of time. Over a long period of time. All right, so are we clear thus far? So can we move to the next chart? All right, Mumtaz. Now don't ask me about this chart later. We're done with this one, right? All right. This is the last one. All right, so here we have what? I don't know if everyone can see that. All right, here I left it in Arabic because I'm just going to try to explain it, inshallah, for the most part. So everyone can write it down. All right. So here, we're back to water that is a purifier. So here, if you can't read the Arabic here, it says purifier, right? Purifier, okay? Now, the water that is a purifier, it also breaks down into 2 categories. Water that is a purifier, it also breaks down into how many categories? 2 categories. The first category is called makruh, which means you can translate it to mean offensive. And the other category is called ghayru makruh, which is considered not offensive. Right? Make sense? Like, so when we say offensive, there are 4 types of water that is considered offensive. In other words, it's not recommended to use it, even though it remains a purifier, but it's not recommended to use it. So somebody might ask, well, why isn't it recommended to use it if it's still a purifier? It's a good question, right? That's a good question, right? If it's a purifier, why can't we use it? I mean, why is it recommended that we don't use it? This is something that we learned from the ulama, Sheikh Abdul Majid as-Subayl, may Allah preserve him. He said, anytime you have issues like this, the scholars of Al-Islam, they say this is because they call it khuruju min al-khilaf. Anytime you have a situation like this and it's hated in a situation like this, the reason why it's hated is because the scholars of Al-Islam differ on it. So they say, if it's an issue that the ulama differ on, then it's better to stay away from it. Does that make sense? If there's an issue that there are scholars of Al-Islam, the Salaf, the scholars of the past, if they differed on an issue, then it's better to stay away from that issue. This is why they call it makruh. Khurujan min al-khilaf. Staying away from the differences of opinion. Is that clear? Huh? No. But, so then, water that's offensive. Ghayru mumazij. Ghayru mumazij. An example of that would be what we mentioned before. There's water that doesn't mix with another substance, even though it fell into it. Like what? A piece of wood falling in the water. A piece of wood falling into the water, some grease. This is makruh. It's not recommended to use. It's not recommended, even though it's a purifier. And here's another thing. Here's another concept. Anything that's makruh, if there's nothing else to use, then it becomes recommended. Perhaps even wajib. Is that clear? So then if you don't have any water except for this water that's considered offensive to use, it becomes wajib to use this water. Well, so then we have ghayru mumazij. That which doesn't mix at all, like a piece of wood dropping into the water. This is also offensive. You shouldn't use it. Bimilh al-ma'i, salt in the water. Remember the sheikh, he actually left. He's not here. He asked, I said, hold that thought. We're going to visit it later. He said, what about the seawater? The seawater. Here's a question. This is a question that I had before. Why is salt water considered hated to use when we know that there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when the Sahaba asked, when they were on a boat, they said, can we use the water in the sea? Because they knew people would throw stuff in it, so on and so forth. And the Nabi ﷺ, he said, huwa tahurun ma'uhu wa hilla maytatuhu. And the Nabi ﷺ, he said in an authentic hadith, that the water in the sea is pure and the dead in the sea, like dead seafood, is also pure to eat. So the question now is, if we have here salt water, why is this salt water hated to use? Does anyone know? Remember before I said I'm going to circle these two things here on that board over there. I know it's in Arabic, but if you can remember what I said, that's the reason why this is hated.
Because it's in a small container.
Okay, so let me explain this here. This water here, bimilh al-ma'i, we're talking about a cup of water, and somehow salt got put in, iodine salt, some type of salt. Sea salt is placed inside of water. It's hated to use. It's offensive to use. Why? When it's okay to use seawater. But this also changed the taste.
It didn't happen naturally.
Ahsant, mashallah, tabarakallah. Because it wasn't a natural change. It was a change that someone did. So when we look at here, the reason why it's offensive to use is because it was changed by fi'l al-fa'il. In other words, a person actually changed that and made it salty. It wasn't salt in its natural state. Is that clear? Like, that's mashallah. I didn't think nobody's going to get that one. Allahu Akbar. And to muntabih. Jayyid. Like, the next one, what'd you say? Like, the next one here is sukhina binajisin. So now you're out in the woods. All right, you're camping. You see some logs around, you got some water, it's cold, you want to heat the water up, make some hot chocolate or whatever you want to do, and the only thing you find is a piece of wood that you saw animals urinating on. Right? You've seen that. Piece of wood. Dogs urinated on it, whatever. You say, you know what, I need some firewood. This is the only wood that's available to use. You light it up. You light it up and you place your pot of water on top of it so you can have something to drink. Or maybe it's cold, you need to make wudu, so you want to make wudu with some warm water. Right? But this water right here is still a purifier, but it's not recommended to use because, as the ulama say, you're not safe from pieces of that najasa from that wood popping into the pot of the water. Is that clear? You look confused. It's clear? Right. So the next one, and then the next one here, the last one here, is an istu'mila fi taharatin mustahabba. You mentioned this in the very beginning. If let's say for example, a person makes wudu. A person makes wudu, right? So if the water was already used in tahara mustahabba, say for example, if I have a bucket of water and I made wudu with it, but I didn't make the type of wudu that removes impurities. I was already in a state of purification, but I still use the water to make tajdeed wudu or to renew my wudu, even though I already had wudu. It didn't change any of its characteristics, except for ritually it was used in a sunan wudu. And therefore, it's not recommended to use. Is that clear? Or no? Why? Well, we'll talk about why later. Because why is that? Because the water changed. Why? How did it change? Ritually, it was used for something else, another act of worship. So now you're going to use this same water for another act of worship again. Then they say it's not recommended. However, you might read. We're not getting into the differences of opinion yet. Right now, I just want you to understand the position here. Is that clear? Now,
I got a question. There's a lot of part of New Jersey. You go there.
So what?
A lot of part of Central Jersey.
Uh-huh.
The water, the smell, it tastes, and the color is not right.
Right. What is it? A lot of water?
So I'm talking about the tip water. Some part
The
of
tap
New
water,
Jersey.
that's different.
Yeah,
that's different.
Those towns, and they taste bad.
Where is it coming from? If it's coming from Ma'ul Kathir, if it's coming, listen, if it's a lot of water, a whole lot of water, I don't want to get into that. And we'll talk about that next class. Because next class is specifically dealing with a lot of water. It's going to talk about stuff like that. I don't want to get sidetracked because that's a whole nother conversation.
Sure. So with the number 4,
Moshe. Now.
Is the point here that you already have wudu, number 4?
You mean, number 4. Yes. No. The water is used for a recommended wudu. You're using the water for a recommended wudu. Perhaps you already have wudu and you want to use it. Or this water was already used for a wudu that was recommended. All right? It wasn't used to remove an impurity, a ritual impurity, but it was used for a recommended wudu. So it changed ritually, if you will. That makes sense. Okay?
That's not clear. It's translated on one time. Down and out. Translated from 2.
2, salt water, water that was heated with something that's najis. And istu'mila fi taharatin mustahabba. If the water was used in a recommended wudu. It was already used. If the water was already used in a recommended wudu, and you're using it again. Let me make that clear, because you said it's not clear. Right now I have a pot, right? I want to use this pot. The water was already used in a recommended wudu. Right now, you already have tahara, right? So you have a bucket of water, and you're going to make wudu out of it again. It's called tajdeed al-wudu. In other words, you're renewing your wudu right now. So you're going to make wudu over the pot of water. Whatever water drips off is dripping back into the bucket, right? To the end of it. I said, man, I don't have any water. He said, well, look, I have some left over here. It was used in a recommended wudu. It's hated to use this water. Now, here's the flip side. If you use that water to remove a ritual impurity, and the remaining water, according to the madhab of Imam Ahmed, this water is impermissible to use. Is that clear? Why is it impermissible to use?
Because they removed the.
Because it was used. Because now they say it was used to lift a ritual impurity. Therefore, the purifying factor from that water is removed. However, that's not a strong position. I just want you to understand that. That's it. So we don't go, oh, brother, if uses no. We're gonna, if you read through Sheikh Uthaymeen's or some of the modern ulama, they might say, no, we don't take that position to the end of it. I'm just giving you the position of the earlier scholars of Islam on these issues. Okay? Is that clear about the bucket and used for a recommended wudu? Because this is important. You might look at this issue now and say, oh, it doesn't make sense. But when we move into the other chapters, there's a lot of things that are predicated based on that statement we just said. See, the fuqaha understand something. They don't just say things just to say it. If they say that here in this situation, then rest assured we're going to move further on in the book of purification and other issues are going to come up. For example, women when they have their haid, we're going to talk about water then. Istijmar. We're going to talk about making wudu, how to make wudu. There's a lot of areas where these principles might come back up again. You're going to mention it again. This is why they said that. Now it makes sense. All right? But we don't want to go too far ahead. Right. So are we clear on what's the offensive side yet? Everything's clear? Right.
Third one was heated water that has najis.
Okay, you're heating up water with something that is najis. Like what? I just mentioned a piece of wood. Right? Piece of firewood that is filled with urination. Because you're out in the woods, animals come, they urinate all over it. It smells. But that's all you have to light the fire up. So you're going to light the fire up with this piece of wood and put your pot on top of it to burn it. This is hated. Even though it's still a purifier, but it's not recommended to use it. All right? Right. The first one is غير ممازج, something that falls into the water but is non-soluble. It doesn't mix with it, like a piece of wood or grease or kafour, which is another type of something that you cut off, like wood or whatever. All right, are we good? Right. So now we're going to slide over to غير مكروه, something that's not offensive to use. Rather, it's labats. Yeah, and you can use it if it's preferred to use. Huh? Number 5. We didn't get the number. There's only 4. Yeah. So here is not offensive to use. The first one, number 1, تغير بمكثه. تغير بمكثه. Yani if the water changes because it was sitting for a long time, just like we covered over there. You see how they're all tying together now? The water that changed because it was sitting for a long time. It's not offensive to use that. So if you find water, you see you left this here like a week ago, you look at it, because most of us, if you left water somewhere for a week, and you say, Dad, you got to make wudu, you're not going to use that water. Right? Q&A, save them for later. But the next one, ما يشق صون ماء عنه. يشق. ما يشق صون ماء عنه. And what this here means, number 2, this type of water here is the one where something falls into it. Like what? Leaves from the tree. What did we say before over here? Moss, algae, stuff like that. That's what this here, number 2, means. Okay? Number 3, بالمجاورة الميتة. If the water is next to a dead carcass. That's this one here. If the water is next to a dead carcass, it's recommended. It's not offensive to use that water. All right? The next one is سخن بشمس. If the water was heated by the sun. You got a bucket of water, you place it under the sun. Right? The next one here is سخن بطاهر. The water was heated by wood that didn't have anything on it. Now remind you, this whole, first of all, are we clear on this right here? You see how everything is tied in now? Now let's look at this here. Talk. Yeah, any impurities. Like firewood. That doesn't have urine on it or anything like that. So if you look at all of this here, if you think back to the very beginning of the class, we mentioned that water, the definition is what? ماء طهور هو باقي على خلقته. Purifying water is water that remains in its original state. You guys with me? When we said original state, we said the original state has 2 different categories. That which is haqiqatan, which is in reality the way that it was, and the other one is what? Hukman. And everything that we covered on these last 2 boards were all hukman. In other words, they still take the position of water in its natural state, even though it changed to some degree, either by taste, smell, or color. Now, so right now we just finished part of tahur. What we have to cover after that is a lot of water. And, we're going to talk about that. Then once we finish that section, then we're going to move on to water that is considered pure but not a purifier. And then after that, water that is considered filthy. Then after that, we'll be done the issue of water. Any questions about this? Think about it, guys.
Got a question.
Yes.
Stolen water.
Stolen? Oh, you can't use that. But you read that from the, come on, Sheikh, you cheating. Come on, man. Listen. We're not studying Roll the Murbit. Roll the Murbit is the explanation of this book. It's a bigger book. And he has a cheat sheet over here. And he's like, oh, what about, come on, Sheikh, you can't do that. We're just making sure we understand the basics, man. We're not getting the stolen water yet. That's another class.
Okay.
And see, the thing is, the fuqaha, the ulama al-Islam, they teach this stuff, the basics. Once you have a foundation with the basics, then you can expand on a topic and get very deep. And then you got books like Mughni, right? A book like Mughni that was written by Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah ta'ala. In his book like this, he mentions the same issues, and then he's going to give you 1,000 positions from the ulama of the past. This is Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Yahya ibn Ma'in to the end of it. This was their position, and these are the other ulama that differed, and this is their evidence, and this is their evidence, and my decision. Nah, you're not ready for that. I'm not ready for that. If you now imagine you go through that on every single issue, you're gonna be confused. In fact, I remember there was a brother when we were in Mecca studying. There was a brother in Medina. In Medina, in the Sharia department, they study a book called Bidayat al-Mujtahid, the Ibn Rushd. A book called Bidayat al-Mujtahid from Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd was Maliki, right? So in the beginning, they was like, yeah, this book is nice. And for us in Mecca, we only studied, Roda Murbid, the fiqh of Imam Ahmed, and But as the brother continued to study, he said, man, I don't even know how to make wudu anymore. He said, I don't even know how to make wudu anymore. I'm like, what happened? Because you got all these statements in his head, all these different positions. It's like, man, I forgot how to make wudu. Now, I'm not saying, some students, they can handle that, but other students, it might be too much. But many of the ulama, they recommend that you start off studying the madhab. Now, you don't have to stick to it, but start off just to get a clear understanding on how they look at it, and then after that, you go wherever, however way you want to go. But in the Mamlakat Arabiyyah to Saudiya, many of the ulama in Saudi Arabia, majority of them are Hanbali. They follow the fiqh of Imam Ahmed. In fact, the country itself rules based on the legal jurisprudence of Imam Ahmed. There's a book called Kashaf al-Qina'. This book is a book that judges use. It's an explanation of a book called Iqna', which is a book from Imam al-Hajjawi, the same author of this book here. But that book is a little bit more expansive. It gets, you think stolen water is a big deal. It goes way beyond that. So the thing about it is, studying fiqh of the religion is a sea. Ilm ad-din, knowledge of the religion, is an ocean. There's no way you're going to get it all. Get what you can get. Because you have to get what you can get. Get what you can get that's going to help you maintain your religion. It's nothing like, unfortunately, many of the brothers are married. You have wives. Your wife may have an issue about her menses. Now she has to go ask another sister, ask her husband, and figure it out. Like, come on. Right? Just like what you said a couple weeks ago about the... Thing is, brothers got to know. You got to know this stuff. You got to understand this stuff, man. You might not want to study menses. You got daughters. Brothers, some of you brothers have daughters. Many of you. These are things about the deen. Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said he spent 9 years studying the menses of a woman. 9 years. Imam Ahmed. Thought we spend like a couple months. Not even. Right? What I'm saying is, it doesn't concern me, but the thing is, if it's something that's available to learn it, you need to take advantage of it. Wallahu ta'ala. Any questions? Bye. And then, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to pick back up next week. For those of you that don't have your notebooks, Al-Mustaq'ni. May Allah aid you. Because the thing is, this is a class. It's not like, it's not for you to sit here and go to sleep, bob your head. We're trying to, give you a little bit that what we covered so that everybody could benefit. Something tangible. You take it home, you teach your family, they teach their family, everybody learn. That's it. Before we came back, the ulama, they used to tell us, "Ishtaghl an-nas bil-ilm." Busy the people with knowledge. Don't busy the people with nothing else, just educate the people. Educate them. Especially y'all brothers in America, y'all have to educate your people. This is your wajib. This is what your responsibility is, to come back and teach. Bas. Right. Any questions, Ikhwan? Khalas. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته